other brother, the
Yeah, Brother
physicist.
Welcome, can you hold on? Yeah, hold on. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's session, the 26th of April, 2025. And our session today is on fostering Pan-African identity. And that's our topic for today. In the write-up that Brother Pigeon shared, it will be welcomed you. So our Saturdays are our unification meetings, and yes, and everything we discuss is linked to the unification of Africa. And we meet to strengthen our collective vision for a united, developed, and fully liberated Africa, which means an Africa that is empowered. So today we delve into the vital topic of fostering shared African identity, exploring how we can cultivate a unified sense of purpose, culture, and destiny across the continent and its diaspora. So we'll engage in meaningful dialogue to reconnect with our shared heritage and chart a path toward a stronger, self-determined Africa. Your voice is essential to this movement. So please share your insights, experiences, and your aspirations. Thank you for coming. Brother Pigeon, I don't think we have a presenter, do we?
No, we don't have a specific presenter for this discussion, but maybe some of the key topical issues that engage to this discussion, probably can engage on them as part of our conversation.
Okay, all right, thank you. So let's share our thoughts on what we think. So let me remind you again, the topic is fostering shared African identity. Is there such a thing as an African identity? Does it exist? And if it does, what is it? And what do you think we could do to foster it? So we will, as there is no presenter, we will share our thoughts, and midway we'll hear the African anthem and then continue the discussion and have a conclusion at the end. So I would suggest we start with Brother Sam, our brother and elder based in South Africa, to share with us his thoughts on fostering a shared African identity. Brother Sam, are you happy to start that for us? You might want to address a question whether the Afrikaners are Africans. There are Europeans on the continent. Some of them have lived here for years. And are they Africans? We have Indians who live in Uganda. You remember Amin threw them out because they refused to take Ugandan citizenship and Ugandan passports. They prefer to hold on to their British passports rather than convert to a Ugandan passport. So Amin said, well, in that case, go to Britain because this is Uganda. I'm not saying what he did was right or wrong. I'm just stating the historical fact. The question then is, well, under Museveni, as you know, a lot of Indians have gone back to reclaim their properties. And some of them take or hold very powerful positions. In South Africa, the Guptas, as you know, also have been accused of capturing the state, and so on and so forth. The question for us is, how do we foster Pan-African identity? And are they Africans? And if I say I'm an African, what makes me an African? Sister Ida, who is not here yet, remember, shared with us a post that she found concerning, and it was Caucasians taking Ghanaian citizenship. And so Caucasians were Ghanaian citizens. And she was querying that. I, at the time, pointed out that there are Africans in England or UK who also have British citizenship. So I saw nothing wrong with Caucasians having African citizenship. So in principle, speaking for me, I'm not speaking for CSG, but speaking for me, I personally do not see a contradiction between skin color and citizenship. But others might feel strongly, differently. Yes, let's share our thoughts. So Sam, if you're ready to start for us, that would be great, because you are sitting in a hot melting pot in South Africa.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, thanks, brothers. And I'm not sure if I really have a perfect way to approach this, but I think for me, my starting point would be what my founding fathers, the leaders of the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania, when they started the PAC, I think fundamentally they recognize first that it is in our togetherness as a grouping of people, and they based everything on what we call, or what they called, African nationalism. They said the Africans in this part of the country called South Africa, but being a misnomer, being the cardinal point of the continent, for us to forge any meaningful unity, to be able to first defeat colonialism, we need this bond as a grouping. And they started there saying African nationalism is the basis of our struggle. And they said all the oppressed people and all, fundamentally what I want to say is the principle that when they formed the PAC, they said, because they were aware already that we have Europeans that have already been here as far back as the 14th, 13th century, they came with this position that says, in a free or in a continentally liberated Africa, the shape and the color of a person will be as irrelevant as the shape of his ears. They said everybody who recognizes the unity of the African people, who recognizes that Africa belongs to the Africans, and who recognizes that the leadership of the African people, and pays his total loyalty to the African majority, that person will be regarded as an African. So they already dispelled the issue that there will be Europeans that would not be able to. And that's why they came with a slogan that says, here's a tree that is rooted in the soil of Africa. Come and be one with us and be the same, the leaves of the same tree, and be under the shade of the same tree. And in that way, they were inviting everyone. They said, oh, as long as you recognize the absolute rule of the African majority, and you pay your loyalty to this African majority, and therefore your total liberty and loyalty is to this African majority, then you will be recognized as an African, and the shape or the color, your color of your skin will be as irrelevant as the shape of your nose or the shape of your ears. So personally, I would say we believe that everyone that, you know, you can't be an African and still be holding a passport or paying loyalty to your country of origin, like coming from Britain and you say, I have dual citizenship. It does not work. Where's your loyalty? So that's why they said you must recognize the African majority and you must pay your total loyalty to this African majority. So in that way, we would have everybody that qualifies under those circumstances to be an African. But the challenge for me is in the current situation, we have lost that as Africans. Even amongst ourselves, we have not been able to bring that united force. If you take South Africa, there's still entities like Inkatha Freedom Party, which was a cultural Zulu cultural party when it was formed. Despite that, now they've transformed themselves into what they call a political party, but it was a Zulu cultural outfit when they started, and they were centered mainly in KwaZulu-Natal. And that is why you will see during the struggle of liberation, they were classified more as puppets of the apartheid regime. So I'm trying to say that even here in South Africa, despite the armed struggle and the revolution that we have undergone, we have not been able to make this bond of the African people to be together in one entity. If you look at the current situation in South Africa, the Inkatha Freedom Party is still an enclave mainly in KwaZulu-Natal. Yes, they are spreading to other areas because political climate says if you want to be in total power, you must expand. But they started as a cultural entity in KwaZulu-Natal. If you look at other political parties that are coming, MK Party, if you look at it currently, it came emanating from where former President Zuma comes, KwaZulu-Natal. And they got all the majority of votes in that area. So we are still not, we have not been able to forge this unity that we want. And therefore, if in South Africa we are unable to do that, then it is a long talk to talk of us influencing Lesotho, which is also a country surrounded completely by South Africa, to influence Swaziland, which is also a country that is surrounded completely by South Africa. Therefore, the struggle to unite the African people to be under one identity, to be one formidable force that the Sobukwes, when they formed the PAC, were envisaging, is still a long talk to go. Thanks.
Thank you, Brother Sam. You raised some very interesting questions. Not sure what Pigeon is gone, but hopefully he will help to chair the meeting. So, Brother Sam, you raised some very interesting issues, and I'll mention them. You're afraid to comment on any of them, or not comment on any of them. One is the way you put it. So it seems that the principle is that being African will not be based on skin color. So that appears to be what is at the foundation of your of PAC. So that raises this question: if if identity is not based on skin color, and yet political hierarchy is based on skin color, meaning that if you are white, you are at the top of a pyramid. The darker you are at the bottom of the pyramid. Then if that is the case, then what kind of political economic society will we have? If we are saying that, yes, skin color is not the basis of identity, and yet the political hierarchy is based on skin color, and the economic hierarchy is also based on skin color, such that the whiter you are, the more you have access to both political and economic power. So there is that aspect. Then there is the aspect which you have experienced in South Africa with the Europeans. At the other end of the continent, we have the Arabs. Gaddafi did make it clear he was African. Not everyone accepted his Africanness, but he said he was African. He promoted the African Union. He promoted African unification, as you are aware. When Mandela left prison, he went to Libya and took pictures with Gaddafi and thanked Gaddafi and the PLO and other organizations for standing by South Africa. And yet we get a persistent criticism that the Arabs don't see themselves as Africans, and that the Arabs are just, in terms of their contempt for the darker skin tones, they are just as racists as the Europeans, and that they see themselves as, in terms of the hierarchy, they see themselves as higher up the hierarchy than their darker brothers and sisters. And even within the Arab countries where there are Africans who are dark-skinned, you don't find them in the echelons of political power. Rather, you find the lighter-skinned ones like the Sadats and the Gaddafis himself and the king of Morocco. Those are all light-skinned Africans, if you like. And the lighter the skin, then you find them. So if you look at the face of Arab governments, more or if not all of them have a white face or a light skin tone face. So in other words, the Arabs are not, in terms of being African, they look down on Africans. The Afrikaners in South Africa may say they are Africans, that they belong to the continent, but do they respect the darker skin tones? So then the other issue you raised indirectly is the African identity, which is in as much as there are cultural differences, and you alluded to that in terms of the Zulus. So the Zulu is a cultural entity, and the Zulus are no different from from Kabaka's group in Uganda. The Buganda nation, the Zulu nation, is no different from the Buganda nation in Uganda, or the Basotho nation, or the Igbo nation, or the Yoruba nation, or the Ewe nation, which I belong to, the Ashanti nation, and so on. Or you see, so there are all these cultural identities, but then is that the same as an African identity? Can we have a shared identity that respects these cultural differences? And now we have Asians also in Africa, who will say they are just as African as any of us. So can we have an African identity that is shared and yet respects all the various what you would call the diversity of identities And some have argued that the shared identities are actually a strength for us. It makes Africa very strong, and so on. So, yeah. So in that case, one could ask: is there such thing as a Ghanaian identity as opposed to a South African identity? Because within the Ghanaian identity, there are the Akans, there are the Evers, there are the Hausas, there are the there are the Evers, there are the Gans, there are different. There are more than 100 cultural groups. I mean, nations. I mean, some of them bigger than the other. Nigeria is no different. So in as much as we say someone will say I am Nigerian, they may say I am Nigerian, but then they are Igbos or Yorubas or Hausas and so on and so forth. And yet, in that Nigeria, they all say they are Nigerians. In South Africa, you all say you are South Africans, despite the different cultural identities. So the question is, why can't we have a supra-African identity as a nation? Why can't we have an African identity? Why are we bringing in cultural identity when in the nation state as currently exists, we don't? Yeah, we don't say because you are Zulu, you can't be South African, or that you don't share South African identity with me, who is not a Zulu. You see, so I am asking, in thinking about our shared African identity, do you think we should bring culture in? So to summarize, so that you can respond how you like, I've read a question of political hierarchy based on skin color, economic hierarchy and equality based on skin color, the issue of Arabs, some of them not seeing themselves as Africans, and some Africans. When I say Africans, I mean Africans who have darker skin tones, not sub-Saharan African. I mean, not seeing Arabs as part of Africa. And then we have the African identity, which as an overarching identity that subsumes cultural identity, and then and in the same way in which national identities basically override cultural identities. Thank you. I know I have said a lot there, but feel free to respond to whichever you like, or all of them if you like. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to highlight or put everything that I said into a better context. I'm not sure. Maybe I think the important aspect here is that all what I said, especially where the issue of race is regarded, I think the philosophy that our founding fathers were expressing was that we believe in this thing of saying there's only one race, and that's the human race. But that did not take away the effects of what has happened, especially in our country, in South Africa. That colonialism came in, and unfortunately, it came in the form of foreigners who are basically white Caucasians. It did not take that away. So they were saying, when we have liberated this country and we have removed the cultural arrogance of white supremacy and everything, we, the African majority, when we have united everybody around this power of the African majority, then we will go back to recognizing that anyone that pays his absolute loyalty to this African majority and is willing to be part and parcel of this grouping and be part of this tree under this shade at the same branches and leaves of this tree that is watered by the rivers of the African soil, that person will be regarded as part of us as a human race. So the issue that we must first see is that they came with these philosophies and approaches, knowing that we want to solve the struggle for liberation. And therefore, first, for us to be able to wage the struggle, we must unite as the African majority. And they even said, we are going to make sure that we are non-collaboratists. And that idea was that they had already, when they moved out of the ANC, seen that the ANC, which started as an African majority group fighting for liberation, once white people started interfering or getting into the ANC, the tone of the struggle changed. And that's why they said, as the PAC, we will not encourage collaboration. We will fight the struggle as this African people, not allowing any person until we have wrested power into our own hands. And then everybody that pays loyalty to us will then be recognized as that. But I think, if I must now conclude, the identity of being African, we all have it. We all have it in our language, in our languages, and you can see somebody in Tanzania has something like maji, meaning water. Madi in Venda here in South Africa, Meti in Sesotho, all those things. The other one is Mazai, which is eggs, Mai in our language in Soto. So you can see that as an African nation, as an African entity, we all have something that culturally identifies us or give us identity. And it is only because of the colonial interference that we went into all these pockets now that we call our own countries. Had we not had colonialism interfering, maybe we would have had that clean cultural identity where all of us were under this one umbrella of identity in Africa. Thanks.
Thank you, Brother Sam. Before I move on to Sister Jasmine, who has joined us. So welcome to Jasmine. Welcome also, Sister Faustine Kabawa. Welcome also. Sam, I want you to address two issues. Thank you for the submission that you've made, which is philosophically very important for conscientism, which is that there is only one human race. It used to be said that there were 4 races, separate races: the white race, the Indian race, or the brown race as they were called, the yellow race, the Chinese, and so on. Then there was the black race, and they sought to imply that there were 4 different races, even though there was no scientific basis for that. So I think you have drawn our attention to the philosophical position of PAC, which is also the philosophical position of radical Pan-Africanism, which is that there is only one human race. It's not because we believe it. It's not because we think it sounds nice, because that is a scientific position. The science has shown that there is only one human race. There aren't 4 or 5, and so on. So thank you for asserting that. But what I'd like you to address quickly, before you don't have to rush, though. When I say quickly, I don't mean rush, but address it in your own way. There are those who argue that the name Africa itself is not indigenous to us. It comes from the Latin Africanus, and that the real name for Africa historically is Alkebulan. So some of our brothers and sisters do not subscribe to this idea of African identity. What they would like is a return to the original, what they would call historical identity of Al-Kebulan. So that is that aspect. Then there's the other dimension, which is in my language. So in my language, we are not Africans. We belong to the African continent as it is currently demarcated geographically. But when we look at you, we look at our brothers and sisters in Uganda or in Nigeria or Sierra Leone or Lesotho, it doesn't matter where on the continent. I'm not so sure about Arabs, the way we see them, but we say that in my language, we say, meaning that we are the black people. That's how we describe ourselves in my language, that we are black people. And so then what that means is that our identity is linked with skin color. So if you are not dark, and remember there are different shades of dark, so it doesn't mean black as charcoal, and there are Ghanaians like that. But there are also Africans, Ghanaians, who are also light-skinned, even though they have no Caucasian blood in their line, they just happen to be lighter. But then for us, we are all black people. So the shade of the skin is not what the shade is not what makes you African. But what makes you African is that it's a dark shade. But there are different although there are different shades of black. The fact that it's a shade of black is what makes us Africans. And so if you are an Arab, for instance, or you are from Lebanon, Middle East, they call it, but we see that as Africa. If you marry a Ghanaian and you have a child, for us, that child is Ghanaian. And because the mother is our sister, we call that boy or girl our sister's child. And therefore, for us, they are still our part of our kinsfolk. And even if you marry a pure Caucasian, European, and you have a child with them, for us, that child is still a Ghanaian or an African. So we don't discriminate on the basis of skin tone in our description of identity. Skin tone is not the basis for us of discrimination. And I think when you explain the PAC position, it seemed like it resonated with that as well. So if you like to speak on those two, the fact that some don't recognize an African identity. They say we are Africans in the sense that we are black people. And then there are those, especially in the diaspora, who say, let's forget about this African thing. We are from Al-Kebulan. What do you say about those? Yeah, thank you. And then when you finish, Sister Jasmine will speak because she's had her hand up. Yes, Brother Sam, over to you. Thank you.
Good evening.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks. My input on this issue of the name Africa and Akabulan. I think this is something that we have all seen. I think even here in our parts, you know, we are all daily discovering ourselves. I think I can only answer it that way. So, unfortunately, we have all came to accept that we are from Africa. The continent is Africa, and we've grown and accepted that as the name. But if historically there are proofs that can prove exactly that, no, basically this was a foreign name, Africa, and the correct ancestral name is this one. I don't think there's anybody who can have come with it. That is why with us in the PAC, we are rejecting the name South Africa. We are saying South Africa is a colonial name first, and they were just depicting the cardinal geographical area where South Africa is. It is south of Africa, at the southern tip of Africa. That's why they called it South Africa. But we are saying the name of the country is Azania, and if you go and trace where Azania comes from and how it came to be known, historically those people who made the research also can trace this name Azania as a name that was referring to a black man, a black country, and others say it was how our forebears called the whole area Southern Africa. So for us in the liberation struggle, we therefore said, when we come into liberation, we will change the name of this country from South Africa to Azania. So I'm just saying, I agree. If Akbulan is the correct name, and scientifically, or no, historically people can trace that name, then it is correct if it is the correct name. And then the other matter, I think we all agree. Even in our country here in South Africa, we say Rbanaba Rantso because Rantso is black. So we see ourselves as this common nationality that is based on our blackness. So I think it doesn't change, and we see the same thing in our neighbors, Botswana, Swaziland, Lesotho. We see the same as we go further into Zambia, Zimbabwe, and that is a commonality that we have, the skin color that is black. But I think when they go to the issue of saying we are one race, basically they are saying this human being it's a human being, whether he comes from the center of Africa, whether he comes from the west of Africa, we are one human being. And even the people that come from Europe, they say life started in Africa, basically. As they spread, people just went into geographical areas that changed even the pigment of their skin. So basically, that's my input. Thanks. Brother Kwame, I'm done. Thanks.
Yeah. Sorry, I have two more questions for that Brother Sam before you go, and then Sister Jasmine speaks. So the word Azania, which language is it? And what does it mean? Sam, unmute yourself.
Yeah, I thought I've already mentioned that. As I say, we grew up in the PAC, and we found that name being used. And if I might say it, I think it was started being used around 60, 66, 67, 68. That's when they came up with this name. But
has it got any specific meaning?
Yes, according to the people who came with the name, they say it says a black man's land, a black man's land.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's interesting, because we are told that in the Greek texts. Herodotus, who I told was Greek and wrote on history, did say that Egypt, for instance, was the land of black people.
Yes.
And these are in the texts. So Egypt was not white, as the racists later claimed.
Yes.
But Sam, before you go and we move on to somebody else, I think what I'm trying to say is that how can we have an African identity, let alone foster it, without an African nation? The only reason I am Ghanaian is because there is a state called Ghana. And that state called Ghana is registered with the United Nations, and it's treated as a person with rights and so on. Now, so how can we talk about an African identity in the absence of an African state? In other words, do you not think that until and unless we have a united African nation made up of the current neo-colonial territories, unless we can bring them all together into one African nation, we cannot foster an African identity? Because the only reason I am a Ghanaian and someone who is Hausa can see themselves as identifying with me is because we are both Ghanaians. And in South Africa, as you are aware, there are South Africans who do not identify with Mozambicans, with Nigerians, and so on, because they see them as belonging to a different nation. So I suppose what I'm saying is that, Sam, from the PAC's perspective, and you share your own perspective, you not think that until and unless we have one African nation fostering an African identity, will be hard. What do you think?
Without even wasting time, I think you are spot on, and that is why our founding fathers, they said we must start where we are to foster or to work towards fostering that. We didn't see anyhow that we can go and try and find unity with our neighboring country when we in South Africa are not united. So in the philosophy of Sobukwe, we needed to unite the African majority in South Africa. And the essence was that, but you mustn't see that as the end of the revolution. You must understand that as long as there's another country in the African continent that is not free, then we will not be free in South Africa. And that's how then we said, and with the PAC in particular, that is why our flag has the jointed lines that joins Africa from, that's why we have the slogan, from Cape to Cairo, Morocco to Malagasy. That is how the PAC founding father said. And I think we should not, if I may talk about the PAC, that he already, Sobukwe, when he was coming into, he already knew about what Kwame Nkrumah has forged. And that's why we said, we subscribe to the theory that until Africa is completely free and united, all these that we want, this freedom, this freedom, and this power of the African continent will not be visible. Thanks.
Yeah. So, but sorry, I have a final question before I move on to Sister Jasmine. So Sam, so you accept the position that when we are talking about fostering African identity, that cannot happen in the absence of an African nation.
I agree.
I think that people confuse national unity with Pan-African identity. I think people confuse it in the sense that they think that if you take any African nation today, the fact that groups there are, for example, powerful entities in there. So if you take Nigeria, for instance, we have the Igbos who want a separate nation of their own. I don't see why they shouldn't have one if they want. But be that as it may, then we have the Yorubas, who also are a powerful nation in their own right. And then we have maybe the Hausas in the north. Now, one can argue that Nigeria as it is not united along nationality lines. That the Igbos do not agree with the Hausas on the north who dominate the military and who impose their will on them, steal their resources in terms of the oil money and so on, remember their budgets and so on. Be that as it may, that there is the absence of internal unity. Yeah, and every African country will have that. There will always be the majority nationality. So in Zimbabwe, I hear the Shona, I don't know if I'm right, the Shona are the majority ethnic group. In Ghana, the Akans are the majority. In Ethiopia, I hear the Oromo are the majority. Be that as it may, yes, there will be these dynamics, and therefore having cultural unity should not be confused with the national identity. And even if groups are fighting within the nation for political power, I'm suggesting, Sam, that people are confusing that with identity. Even though, for instance, people may be fighting for their own nation, like in Nigeria, it doesn't mean they still don't see themselves as Nigerians in the meantime. They still carry Nigerian passports. Yes, the Igbos want their Igbo nation, the Biafra state, but in the meantime, whilst that state is not in existence, they still see themselves as Nigerians, and they carry Nigerian passports. So I am suggesting, Sam, that people are confusing identity, national identity or cultural identity with the national identity or or identify with the state or with the nation. What do you think? And please, that will be my last question to you. I promise. Thank you.
I think I tend to go with what you are saying. I agree. We are mixing or getting confusion around the identity as you put it. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. Let's now. We will hopefully hear from everyone as long as you want to speak. That is on Thursdays when we hold our meetings. We like to hear from everyone because
sorry, brother Kwame.
Yes, Sam.
Just before I close, I think I want to urge people, because I might not be able to be maybe verbatimly quoting this great man that I call Robert Sobukwe. But if people can go into Google and get something called the Speeches of Mangaliso Robert Sobukwe, I think there's a lot that people can find out of how this great man was trying to shape the struggle for us in South Africa, but connecting it with the African continent. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, brother Sam, for drawing our attention to, I believe Sobukwe was from Lesotho. Is that correct? Sam, is that correct? That was originally from Lesotho.
I'm not sure about
Sam,
his
is that
name.
correct?
No, I'm saying I'm not sure of that. He was from Lesotho.
Sure,
maybe his parents, yes, but
right.
He was born in Graaff-Reinet in South Africa.
South Africa. Okay, thank you. For those of you who have joined us, welcome, Sister Ida. Welcome, Sister Nyaguthi. We are pleased to see you here today. We missed you. Welcome, Sister Chizomo. welcome, Sister Marlin, and welcome, Brother Coco. Thanks, welcome, and we are discussing fostering Pan-African identity. And my discussion or my exchange with Sam has drawn some conclusions, which is that what I can take from this, that if we want to foster African identity, it can't be done in the absence of an African nation. In other words, there has to be an African state from Cape to Cairo, if you like. If it is to cover the entire continent, then there has to be a state like that, however big it is, just like there is China or the USA. In other words, if we want to have an identity like the Chinese have and say, I am Chinese, right? When the Chinese are just like us, they have the different groups, yeah? There's not just one ethnic group in China, as you all know. They're also as many and different as we are. But they have a state called China, which is vast. And so they have an identity called the Chinese. And the argument is that if we are going to foster an African identity, we also, like the Chinese or the Americans, have to have an African state, an African nation. And then we can have an African identity. As materialists, we will say that is correct, because you can't be an African just in your mind. That is not enough. Your identity must be rooted in the concrete reality. Okay, that for us is important. So we thank Sam for his extended sharing of the PAC position. Is also to a large extent the Nkrumah position, which to a large extent is a consensus position as well. And then the other thing also is that we agree that there's only one human race, and that is the human race. And that human race has different ethnic groups within it. And those ethnic groups, some of them, in fact, some of them may tend to have a certain shade of skin color. But for us, that is not what defines a human being. What defines a human being for us is that they are members of the one human race. So we know that a dog is not a human. We know a cat is not a human because they are not, they don't belong to the human race. But we also accept that the human race is not the only race on earth. There is a cat race, there is the animal race, there's a fish race, there are the planetary race, however you want to put it. Anyway, so thank you for joining us. Our topic, if I may remind you all, is fostering the African identity. So let's hear from Sister Jasmine. Brother Pigeon, yes.
The book that has been referred by Elder Sam is already in our chat. Yeah. Speech of Mongaliso Sobukwe. So anybody can take it from there.
Oopsie. No, thank you. I was going to ask him to share it with us. So thanks for sharing. Brother Pigeon, are you happy to chair going forward?
Yes, I'm okay.
Yeah. Sorry, are you able to?
Yes, I'm able. I'm okay.
Right, I've been chairing for 1 hour and I think I need a break.
Okay.
So if you continue chairing, so Sister Jasmine's hand is up. It's been up for a while. So we've heard from brother. So I think it's actually from a sister and a brother and a sister, but in that order. So thank you, Brother Pigeon. Over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Comrade. And once again, feel most welcome to our class. This is where we discuss issues and actually share our thinking. Basically, what we do is sharing our thinking. So, Ambassador Sister Jasmine Rowe, please come in.
Good evening, everyone. And my apologies, I've been double booked on meetings on Saturdays lately. But on the topic, race, nation, who are we? From what I know, our continent is called Alkebulan. Alkebulan was also places like Sicily, France, and those areas were part of our continent. So I heard Sam mentioned South Africa and the name that we use now. And you use the Cape to Cairo, Cape to Cairo. But from what also I understand from the maps, Asian maps that I have, that the continent was Upper Ethiopia and Lower Ethiopia, which means that what is known as South Africa today was actually the Upper Ethiopia. So the map is actually upside down. And I heard mentioned of the Arabs. What Arabs actually mean is mixed. They were Arabians that lived in the area of what we call Saba. Some they call it the Middle East today, you know. And before the sub-Sahara slave trade, the transatlantic slave trade, the sub-Sahara slave trade had started before. So the interbreeding program, which is what we're still going through, the interbreeding program was like 1,500 years before the sub-Sahara, before the transatlantic slave trade. The interbred, those people are who are called Arabs, that the interbreeding has not stopped. So when they say they are Arabs, if you check what the word Arabs mean, it's mixed. So it's another mixed race. The people of the continent from Asian times were called Ethiopians, which means sunburned people, which we are sunburned people. We live and love the sun. We need the sun. So we have the Ethiopians, we have Asians, which is where my brother was referring to Chinese, but within China, within Asians, you have Japanese, you have all these other nations, sometimes referred to as yellow, but they are called Asians. The Europeans are always called Europeans, whether they come from Germany, England, wherever, they are always called Europeans. And the Asians are always called Asians. But the Ethiopians, which you refer to as Africans today, suddenly become nations and nationalities. So with the Berlin Conference and splitting up the continent, you will have Ghana, I think maybe 300 and odd tribes there, Ethiopia, and different places, Jamaica, Barbados, but we're still Ethiopian sunburned people. The difference is the confusion that the colonials put amongst us that makes us into different peace countries, different nationalities, invisible borders, and so on and so on. So even though the countries were broken up, the continent was broken up into these little pieces and places, then came different tribes and different religion. These things mainly happen amongst us. The Europeans, as I say, are always Europeans, no matter where they go, they are Europeans, and the Asians are always Asians. But with us, as you know, we'd say Africa then, because that's what they're calling the continent rather than Al-Kabalan. We seems to be the ones that just nations and nationalities. I look at like, say, Jamaica as a nationality. The people are still Ethiopians. Ghana is, again, Nigeria, the same. We are still all Ethiopians. There's a saying in Ethiopia that all Black people are Ethiopians, you know, so that's who we are. But the colonials have given us different names and we're using these different names, and it's causing a lot of tribalism, a lot of fussing and fighting amongst ourselves. The chair had mentioned before about the Oromos. We have in Ethiopia 85 different tribes, but once a year, December, we all comes together, including the Rastafarians, who are known as the 83rd tribe of Ethiopia. And what that day is called is nation and nationalities. But as I say, that the word Arab itself, it means mix. Just like in Ethiopia, there is Habasha. Habasha, again, means mix. You had like the Indians were the first people that came into mix with the Ethiopians. And you'll hear people say, oh, we're not African, we are Ethiopians.
Okay.
Ethiopia is not a place, it's a nation. And that includes all of us wherever we're born. Thank you for that. I just needed to say that.
Okay, thank you, Jasmine. I want to just follow up with one question to you, Ambassador. I want to follow up with one question to you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, you see, your story is a bit interesting in terms of your identity a bit. You either are born out of Africa as a continent, you find yourself back to Africa as a continent. Who you think is an African? Somebody living in Africa as a continent, or somebody who's black, of no matter shades of black? Who do you think is an African to you?
The word African and the word black was put there by the colonials, is what I'm trying to say. If we speak of today within our unity, I am born in Jamaica. So accordingly, I am an African, according to the words that are used by the colonials, because of the continent where we originated from.
In my mother tongue, there's no word African. In my mother tongue, there's word black. So does it mean that also the color black is a white man who brought? We never had a black color in our African culture.
No, well, not of the color of a man's skin. No, the colonials brought it. And the colonials originally, they call us niggers, then Negroes, then they call us colored, and then they call us black. And now we have picked up the word and say, okay, the continent is Africa, so we are Africans. But the original name, Alkebulan, is where it is. If you look at the ancient maps, you will see that Upper Ethiopia, Lower Ethiopia, even the Atlantic Ocean was called the Ethiopic Ocean. And the people from the continent were Ethiopians. My grandson and I reasoned on something the other day, and he's saying how, because places like Britannia, which is called Britain today, was populated with Ethiopians, meaning Black people, as you would say, Black people. Jamaica itself, Jamaica, the island where I'm born, I was told that the first people that was there were Arawak Indians. But of course, we don't have archaeologists digging up Jamaica until in the past few years that the young students that studied archaeology and started to dig up Jamaica, Spain, the only thing they say they found was statues of Ethiopians, meaning black again, Black people, sunburned people. That's what Ethiopia means, sunburned people. That's what it means. So they found that there was no such thing as Arawak people on the island. Christopher Columbus was lying. And there is no dead bodies, no burial ground, nothing to show that there was anyone else there besides those people of African descent, which are Ethiopians. So the color of our skin basically is called Ethiopia. Ethiopians, sunburned people.
Okay, thank you. Before we go to General Nunaki, Ambassador Jasmine, what is Abyssinia? What is Abyssinia to you? The word Abyssinia.
Also dark. The Abyssinians, since the continent was then, all the continent was taken over by the colonials, there was a part left that was called Abyssinia because of the tribe, like, you know, the hairstyle of those people, they're called Abyssinia. So when the fighting for Abyssinia, the Italians wanted to fight to take Abyssinia, knowing that the whole continent was called Ethiopia, that Abyssinia was named Ethiopia. So that part of the continent, the whole continent was Ethiopia. But to keep that name on the continent, Abyssinian, which is the same area, is then called Ethiopia.
Thank you.
Because
Brother
if you
Kwame.
think about it as well,
Yes.
Pigeon, right? If you take the War of Adwa, with the Italians trying to come to take over, they didn't have any colonies, so they come to take this part, Abyssinia is what it was called at the time. They came to take it and could not take it. That's the first part of, that is where Pan-African actually begin, because all the people around the area was warring against one another. But when they saw that these colonials was coming to take over the country, they forget their differences and fight
Okay.
with the Italians.
Thank you, Ambassador. We have to move to the next person, but Brother Kwame, please come in.
Yeah, I think.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, yes, yeah, Sister Ambassador. Before I say what I want to say, may I remind you that you owe us a presentation on economics, on the currency. Yeah, so please, we are still waiting for you to do that for us.
Yeah, I know. I'm still waiting on them too. I have keep putting it out to Dr. Linus, but I
Yeah.
have not spoken with him for a few months, but I did keep reminding him. And his last one was that they were updating, and once they updated and got the new app out, they would come and do the presentation. But as I say, that most Saturdays I've been in other meetings,
Yeah,
which was locking me out of this one. So
that's okay. Yeah, for those of us listening, Sister Ambassador was going to speak to us on the Lumi, which is a new currency that we are hoping. The hope is that it will become an African currency. So what I want to say is, Sister, so Brother Pigeon, thank you for letting me speak. So Sister Ambassador has raised some very interesting issues. So in the same way as people used to refer to Africa as its original name is Alkebulan, as Sister Ambassador has explained. Another word which I didn't mention, which I should have, was that other people also saw the whole continent and called it Ethiopia. Now, if we are going to accept the word Ethiopia, then why not the word Africa? Why do I say that? Because the word Ethiopia is not an African word, is it? The word Ethiopia is a Greek word. It comes from Greek. So if we are going to say that we don't like the word African because it has origin in Latin, well, so is Ethiopia, which has origin in Greek, and both the Greeks and the Romans, in terms of our history, have not been just to us. The Greeks stole all our knowledge and claimed it was theirs. As we all know, we've been looking at this in our test day classes. We know how Aristotle got his protege, Alexander, I call him the thief, some say the great, to steal our books, and then he put his names on our manuscripts, and so on and so forth. So there is that problem that if the issue is a name, then why should we reject Africa from Afrikaners and accept Ethiopia, which is a Greek word? Now, what is the meaning of Ethiopia in Greek? It means what it means in my language, a dark skin tone. And this is why I said earlier that in my language, we call ourselves Amaibo, which means the black people. So if the word Ethiopia means the black people, which is what it means in Greek, then we are saying the same thing. Then let's reject the word Ethiopia, and then let's reject the word Africa. Let's embrace the word Alkebulan. Yeah. And if you look in the history, the African continent has had different names in the past. Brother Anunnaki is here. He will tell us. Maybe we were the Anunnakis. So we can argue over all that until the cows come home. Yeah. The issue is this. And this is our position. Well, this is my position. And Brother Sam agreed with me. That all that discussion and argument is irrelevant in the absence of an African state. Without an African nation, geographically and in law, and based on what we want as Africans, where, say, tomorrow there's a nation called Africa, Ethiopia, call it whatever we like. We can have a referendum and decide from different African names what name we want to call it. We may want to call the whole of Africa Azania. Why not? Azania sounds more, and Azania has the same meaning from what Sam said as Ethiopia. Yeah. So in that case, why don't we call the whole continent Azania and forget about these Greek and Latin names? I'm just saying. So the main point for me is which Sam has agreed. We don't know if others will agree with us, because if you do, then it just means we issue a communique saying that we think that in order to foster up an African identity, we need an African nation. See, and that is the key. An African nation that can have a continental government. Then we can have then we can talk about an African identity in the same way as I can. If I'm an Ever from Ghana, but I'm a Ghanaian. Sister Ida here is a Ghana from Ghana. We're not from the same cultural group, but we identify as Ghanaians.
Okay.
So similarly, if we have an African state, Brother Pigeon, myself, Brother Nunaki, Sister Ambassador in Jamaica, we can all call ourselves Africans, Ethiopians, whatever name we decide. Azania. Okay. Am I making sense? So that is the philosophical position or the practical position. Thank you.
Welcome, thank you. But just also we remind ourselves that there's no one country called Asia. But within the Asians, they have China, they have India, they have the rest, Russia, and the rest. Therefore, there's also no one country called Europe, but we have London, Germany, or whatever, UK, Germany, France, and the rest. But the same way again, if you talk of one continental Africa, now with the Arabs who don't see themselves as African because of their skin pigmentation, will they also belong to the so-called African country?
Why? But Brother Pigeon, why are they in the African Union then? Because they recognize they are in Africa.
No, just because they belong in a geographical position called Africa, in a geographical position. But then you see the quote that you were asked by Ngudwa Diongo. Ngudwa Diongo says that we are not Africa. The Africa is the unity of Africans.
Yes, Brother Pigeon, you are making the same argument as Museveni makes, which is that he doesn't believe in unification because of cultural differences. You're making the same argument that we shouldn't have an African nation because we don't share the same culture with that group. You see, that is the argument. Nkrumah married from Egypt. Nkrumah married an Egyptian, and she's Arab. Does that mean she's not Ghanaian? She was as Ghanaian as a Ghana woman or an Ever woman. So I think if you recall the argument this discussion Sam and I had, we are confusing cultural identity with a national identity or an African identity. And when we say African identity here, Sister Jasmine is right. If we use in that sense that if we use the word Ethiopia or Al-Kelbulan, then we are saying that let's have a shared Al-Kelbulan identity. Now, the Al-Kelbulan identity is not going to be in our head. We are not idealists. It's going to be concretely in a document, in law, which says that now there is an African nation called Ethiopia. It spans from Cairo to okay. So what? So I'm saying that we need to move from confusing culture with a national identity. The other thing also, Brother Pigeon, is that the name Russia was not imposed on Russians, as far as I know. The name Germany was not imposed on the Germans. The name China was not imposed on the Chinese. If anybody knows that they were imposed by colonialists, please let us know. The name Ghana was not imposed on us. Yeah, we chose the name ourselves. Ghana used to be called the Gold Coast by the colonialists. It is we who called it Ghana. meaning the land of gold, and in Nkrumah, it's where that. So yes, we can choose a name for the new African nation. And the other thing also, brother, is that Europe is a fraud. Yeah, the name Europe is Europe is part of Asia. This whole thing, Europe thing, is a fraud. It's a geographical fraud. Europe is part of Asia. Let's begin to reject these impositions that have just been created to steal resources from Africa.
Thank you, General Naki. As we look at African shared identity, please come in and also let us know if the Boers will also fit to be Africans in the shared identity of this Africa. Brother Anunnaki, please come in.
Yes, son of the lake, you thanks, my brother, even for the teachings of today. Wonderful. Yeah, first of all, my brother, I would just cleanly say that this is just the issue of genetics. If you can remember, one spoke about it, that even the word itself in the Bible, Genesis, basically means genetics, you see. So there's a lot of terminologies that we need to be aware of, more especially when you discuss such issues. And here, to answer your question, yes, we can be united as the people of the world, regardless of our genetics, of our genetic makeup. Now, and then to answer the issue of the Boers, I would say the Boers basically are white people that come from this place. You say it's Europe, you see. So they are not African. Even the word Afrikaner or Afrikaans, it's a made-up word they made. It's not even older than 100 years. You see, so because if we would say that because someone is born in Africa is now an African, then that means that even the black Eskimos in Europe or in Asia are Asians, but that's not the case. In those countries, if you are black, you are from Africa, regardless, or they treat you that way. So my contribution basically is just to say that basically we must be careful of the terminologies the mainstream academia has fed into us, because the issue here basically is the issue of power. That's why they didn't like even the terminology black power from when the Pan-Africanism started as an organization in the Caribbean, you see. So, like for instance, let's look at this word Arab, you see, which also means in the deeper context it was taken from, which is Latin. It also means that people who dwell in the sand or desert dwellers, the word Arab. And if you can check geographically, where do the Arabs predominantly stay? They stay in the desert areas. And if you can even look at in Africa, where do the Arabs predominantly stay? Where do they conquer Africa? Algeria, Morocco, Libya, Egypt, those are in desert areas. And then when you look at the word Sahel, which comes from obviously the alliance of the Sahel states, the word Sahel means the coast. It's also come from the Arabic language, the word Sahel. The word Sahel means coast or shoreline, which can also be translated into, you can use it figuratively, into the geography of Africa. When you look at Sahara, which is also an Arabic name for desert. That's why I used to say that you cannot say Sahara Desert because it's stupid, because the word Sahara means desert. So you can't say Sahara Desert because we'll be saying desert. So the word Sahara is an Arabic language. So when you go down, we have these sub-Saharan regions where you actually start to enter the grassland, or they call the savanna regions in Africa, where you start to see the grass and everything and livestock, and you see your typical jungle scenario. So as you enter those places, there's these countries, Guinea, Niger, Mali, Chad, Sudan. these places are in those areas called the Sahel regions, you see. So the Arabs, they named them the Sahel regions because the word Sahel means coast. So that's why I'm saying this, I'm emphasizing on this, because they play tricks on us on words to confuse our mindset, you see, of things that you already knew in the past. So also when I go even to the issue of Earth, how they confuse us, they said Earth was flat, but their own scientists, the white scientists who they ended up killing because of this discovery, found out that that was not the actual truth and proved that the Earth was actually a globe and that the Earth was revolving around the sun and other planets called solar system, and found out that there are actually millions of other solar systems in the so-called universe, which was a science that the black people prior to the previous flood, the one in the Bible called Noah, the Noah's flood, which washed away the Africans, the so-called black civilizations we had around the world. And then they were washed away during the flood, and then we had to start over building civilizations around the world, which is like 7,000 years ago. So now the main academic scientists, on my last point, is that now they use our amnesia to justify that we are a rainbow nation, we are a multi, whatever you want to call it, because they use it from the context of power. Because what matters is power, you see. So they knew that if they keep us as blacks worrying about, no, we are a rainbow nation, while them as an ethnicities, the Chinese and whatever they group and call themselves, while they're focusing on feeding on their own children and everything, we as Africans are slaves around the world for other nations. So that was basically how they took our world history and used it as a weapon. And so even this issue of the names of the continents, you'll find out that as you find out that we are the gods who created everything on earth, you will find out even creation of languages was created by black people. So if language, how to speak as a man, you see, was created by a black person, then and everybody who's using their lips to speak now today got that skill from a black person. So it doesn't matter what language you use to name the continent whatsoever. The fact remains that the creators of this is us. Thank you.
Thank you, Naki. Because of time, I will not engage you further, but I think this class appears to be answering an historical question of, before we say we foster our shared identity, what is our identity? What is our identity? And I think, Brother Kwame, I'd like you to play the English version, because it also speaks more of who we are in terms of we are the people of what. Because the words, if you play the African anthem in the English version, it will speak to you, we are the people of the sun. And it gives more of our identity in this AU anthem. Unless people will understand Swahili, I'll have to translate to them. But it's okay, Brother Kwame. You can go ahead with the African Union anthem, then I come to Sir Windhoek, then I'll go to Sister Ida.
Yeah, let me put the English version on as you asked for, Chair.
Yeah, and I will request members to clearly understand the words that have been used there, because I think the people created that anthem beyond how it sounds like being a church thing, but the words that are used there are very strong. They give a lot of some message that we need to listen to.
So brothers and sisters, here we go. This sounds like a church.
And Brother Kwame, today I don't want you to play the AU anthem as just an AU anthem, but I want us to get some messages. I think you'll direct this after the anthem, because there's a serious message that relates to what we speak today, our identity.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So here we go. English version, brothers and sisters.
Let us all
Thank you, Brother Kwame. My interest is that we are flesh of sun and flesh of sky. I think one day Raspara will explain to us how we are flesh of sun and a flesh of sky.
Brother Pigeon, it means that what we are made of, carbon, comes from the stars. These are created in stars. That is where they are created. That's what it's a scientific position.
Brother Raspara is saying the anthem was passed down by Freemasons. Anyway, sorry.
The other thing, Chair, can I make a quick comment?
Yes.
I think the question you asked, brother Anunnaki, that can the Boers be seen as Africans? I think that touches on the point that Sister Ida has also made, if she would like to speak to that topic, because I think it's important, which is that there was a YouTube video, a podcast, where people were taking Ghanaian citizenship who did not look or who were not African. And so the question was raised, how can these take Ghanaian citizenship? And I think the question you asked, Brother Naki, is the same. Supposing the Boers arrived in South Africa today, and can they apply and be citizens of South Africa? So I think that's it. Now,
no, Brother Kwame, it extends beyond that. For example, if we were to have African citizenship, for example, an Africa ID, now can the Boers apply to be Africans?
I was coming to that. Now, the issue for us, Pan-Africanists, the radical kind, because not all Pan-Africanists believe what we believe. We believe there should be one African state. Liberal Africans, Pan-Africanists don't necessarily believe that. And conservative Pan-Africanists do not necessarily believe that. As you know, there are conservative Pan-Africanists who believe that we must maintain the current neo-colonial territories and so on. So the question is this: in fostering Pan-African identity, if tomorrow we have a new African nation, call it whatever we like. Let's say Azania, say it's called Azania or Alkebulan. The question then is, can someone apply to be a citizen of that nation? And the answer must be yes. Otherwise, then we'll be discriminating. And what would the basis for our discrimination? We can stop people from coming in if we think they will not come to when they come in, they will destroy our nation. In the same way as any country can say that at the airport, you can't come in because of A, B, C, D. So in principle, Pigeon, Chair, anyone can apply to be an African. And if the name is called Africa, if it is Alkebulan, then anyone can apply to be an Alkebulan citizen, which means that our brothers and sisters who are in Brazil, who are in Jamaica, can also apply to be Alkebulan citizens. So why not? And if a brother from Alkebulan marries a Caucasian and the woman is white and she wants to be a citizen of Alkebulan, are we going to say no?
So
then there are children who are mixed. Are we going to say no? Well, you don't look dark enough. Then we are ourselves beginning to practice discrimination based on skin color. And Africans, fundamentally, we embrace all shades of color. Thank you.
Then we are making the United World Government rather than the United African Government, because a Chinese with a donkey.
No, Brother Pigeon, I'm referring to an African nation.
So a Chinese with an African citizenship is not called an African, irrespective of him being Chinese, because he's having an African citizenship document.
No, but you see, today, as we speak, you can be an American citizen if you meet the criteria. You can be a British citizen. No, it doesn't matter what your color is, if you meet the criteria.
So you'll be called a Briton or a Chinese, irrespective of you being black?
I personally don't hold a British passport, so I can't speak to that. I will still hold a Ghanaian passport. I'm just making the point. Thank you.
Okay, let's get to Sawindok. Sawindok, and then Sister Ida. Raspan, I'll come back to you, please. Sawindok?
Yes, greetings.
Yeah, greetings.
Yeah. Hey, let me rather be the, let me take the radical Pan-African position, if I'm allowed.
You're allowed, comrade.
Thank you so much. Africa for Africans, Asia for Asians, and all other continents for those people. How can we live in the same house if we don't have a common word for X or water? A daily usable commodity. Europeans, Caucasians, when they came to Africa, they came as settlers. They did not come in peace. They murdered, they killed, they stole. That's why they are in Africa. They are not citizens, they are not settlers. What would make them to qualify as citizens of Africa if they came as settlers? Africans, we have got a tendency, maybe because of the spirits in us, we have got a tendency of sugarcoating everything. We have a high degree of mercy. We are very forgiving. We are all pleasers. Until when? And that is to the benefit who and to the detriment of who? All just to the detriment of Africans. So Africans, we have to draw a line and say Africa for Africans and any other place for other people. I submit.
I think Kwame Nkrumah in his conference of, is it 1957 or 1958? What was the theme of that conference? Africa for Africans. I don't know who he meant to be African by the term Africa for Africans, but I think some speeches that came out of that conference in 1958, where Nkrumah was alongside other liberation movement leaders, they were very clear on what they meant. And I think that's also speak to what you're trying to speak to, Sawindok. But let me hear what Sister Ida asked first, Brother Kwame.
Yeah, of course, Africa has to be for Africans. I mean, what else? We can't have Africa for Europeans. We can't have Africa for Chinese. Of course, Africa has to be for Africans. Of course. I mean, that is not, it's not negotiable. The issue is that as we speak, we don't yet have an African nation. It doesn't exist. We have former neo-colonial territories. So we need to have an African nation. We as Africans can decide who can and who can't be a citizen. That's up to us. Thank you.
You are bringing the aspect that makes me bring Sister Ida in.
Yes.
If Africa is for Africans, can Ghana be for Ghanaians, or Ghana can be for anybody else, but Africa is for Africa? Sister Ida, please come in. This was the issue you raised some times back. Please share your thinking in this conversation.
I think what I raised some time back is people getting passports that say they're Ghanaian and they have nothing to do with Ghana, that they're actually buying passports and possibly have never lived in Ghana, but just it's for them it's cheap. But I would say to you that my query about something Brother Kwame said about Britain and American, Africans being British and American and stuff like that. I would say that half the time there's always a query as to people being Black British, Afro-American. They're not just American and such. If you have a color the color comes first, and then the country. Well, though someone who's listening to me is nodding, saying no, but I think that there's a slight problem. Not that I want to distinguish between people, but I mean, today I saw a really disturbing video about somebody being run down with a car just because he had stolen from a white person in South Africa, and then the car reversing to make sure that they got him. And it's like, please, how can that be? How can I even? And I watched it in all innocence. And then, you know, I was so shocked because I hadn't seen the warning. I hadn't, I just could not believe such a thing. But so I would say that there are problems, and that where did I hear the term sun-baked skin? Was it with you, or was it with another group this evening? Sun-baked skin could cause problems to those who aren't sun-baked. So personally, I think that yes, you may get citizenships to different countries, and Africa for Africans needs to be examined. Are we talking sun-baked Africans, or are we talking those who say, oh, because they've lived or their parents have lived one generation and they were born into that country, gives them the right to be Africans, but white Africans, if there's such a term. I don't know I have anything else to say, but thank you.
Thank you. But I call me, I've heard the word sunbed for the first time. Maybe I'm too ignorant to the issues of colors.
Yeah, but Brother Pidgey, sun-baked is what the word Ethiopia means. Sunbent. That's what it means. Can I is it okay? We are getting to the end of the session. It's getting 9 o'clock.
No, Sister Chisomo is back.
We haven't heard from a lot of people because people came very late, as usual. If they had come earlier, we would have had a lot of time to discuss the topic. Yeah, but yes, please go on and let's hear from others.
Yeah, Sister Chisomo's hand was up, so permit me just to take her hand up, then we can see what to do next after that. Sister Chisomo, I know you address your hand, please.
Yes, no, a lot of it has been mentioned, but this happens in every group you go into. At least this one is a bit mild about who an African is or who we are. There's been a repeat saying, oh, Chinese call themselves so Chinese, and Chinese is based on that geographical area called China, Europe. What's another one? Yeah, so, but when it comes to us, there's so much confusion. It's like somebody is in a body that they don't know. So they're guessing, am I black? Am I this? Am I that? Am I this? Am I that? So I've never understood why we don't know who we are. And yet we're so visible. So visible. People can spot us from there. Anywhere we go, we are treated because of that visibility. They don't even ask whether you're black, whether you're this, whether you're that, all these names we call ourselves. And we've got this thing about they called us, but then we're also calling ourselves different things. So many names, just too many. I was in a group, I went on a YouTube channel. They do live sessions. Just discussing this. It took us 6 hours. 6 hours of arguing about who we are. The other one was calling themselves FB. What was it? FBA. Another one was SO something. Another one was something else. The Kabilans were coming in. The Israelites were coming in. The blacks were coming in. The Africans were coming in. And we actually believed we are all different. And then there was another guy who had his name as mulatto. I understand mulatto means colored. Is that right? So they were after him. Yes, but where are you from? Who are you from? Why are you from? And he's saying, but I'm a mulatto because my parents are mixed. And then somebody then turns around and says, most of the African Americans are mixed anyway. That's why you have, when you take your DNA, you have different ones. And then they started arguing about, I've got 99%, I've only got 5, I've only got this, I've only got that. Why do we have a problem knowing who we are? I've never understood that. I have never.
Thank you. Thank you, Sister Joe. I think let's end this first session with that question, because I believe we have been focusing on historical identity first. Who are we before we share that cultural identity, who we are? So, Brother Kobe, please bring us to the end of it. But I think Sister Chisomo's question is spot on.
I think Sister Chisomo is addressing cultural identity, whereas we here today are focused on a political identity. So
because we too have a location, but we don't use it. We call ourselves this, that, this, that, the.
Yeah,
everybody's calling by location, but we're calling ourselves by something else.
Yeah, Sister Chisomo, even as we speak, you are Malawian, I am Ghanaian. So we are not the same.
But Malawi is in Africa.
Yes, but you are Malawian.
But all these other names does not refer to Africa.
But you see, there are Africans in the diaspora, aren't they? So
yeah, but in the diaspora is where people will call themselves different names that has no connection with Africa.
Okay.
The point I'm making is that some of the discussions you refer to are arguments around cultural identity. What we are interested in CSG is because we want a nation that can compete on the global stage. For example, sit and negotiate with China in terms of, for example, the resources in Congo as it is right now. Everybody is there stealing, including African states. So then we have all kinds of military problems on the continent. If we have one military, because we have one African state, that solves the problem. So the identity that we are referring to here subsumes all those. For us, those are intra-identity issues. So the Evers and the Gans can fight all they like, but they are all Ghanaians. Yes, so that is what we are interested in. We are saying that we want to foster an African identity that is rooted in a new nation. Now, we can decide how we call it. We can decide how we determine who can get citizenship. But I accept what Brother Windhoek said. Africa is for Africans. It can't be for anybody else. I mean, that is non-negotiable. And yeah, so that is the essence of the topic for today. Next week, Saturday, we shall be looking at so it'll be 26th of April today. Next week is the 3rd. Next week Saturday is the 3rd of May, and we shall be looking at STISA. And STISA is a scientific technology and innovation strategy for Africa. I repeat, STISA, STISA. It's science, technology, and innovation strategy for Africa. So for those of you who love technology, AI, and all these new things, please come prepared to share your thinking with us on how you think we can progress with technology on the African soil. I think we are all aware that we have the ancient society who have created all kinds of apps, they even have apps that match Zoom, and we are told it's even better than Zoom and so on. So let's come next Saturday and discuss that. Brother Pigeon, make the other announcements and then bring the meeting to a close. Thank you.
Thank you. Sister Marion, unfortunately, our time is up, and we hope you could.
Sorry, Brother Pigeon, are we starting the what's Welcome was asking for, which is the basic ideas of Gnosticism? Are we starting that next week? If that is the case, please make that announcement as well. Thank you.
Thank you. We will actually agree on specific time and date next week, but we'll have to announce it in our classes for next week so that people start preparing for that class that is coming up. We are looking forward to start a class on basic principles. It can be a short one. It will be a short class just to understand basic principles of consciousness. The ones like materialism, the ones like dualism, the ones like philosophy, ideology, and the rest. So we will be starting a class on that, and we will communicate that by next week. I wanted to say, Sister Marin, our class is up, and sorry for not allowing you to speak. But for now, let's bring this meeting to an end. And we are looking forward to all these recordings available by next week. All the recordings of last week are available already. I'll share the direct links via your direct inbox, as I always do. And let's look forward to next week again. We are moving on with chapter 3. We've just started chapter 3 of consciousness, which is society and ideology. I'll request us here to join us in that class as well, where we are looking at society and ideology. We have just come from philosophy and society, and now we are in ideology and society. So please join us and have this interactive session where we share our thinking freely to the text by Kwame Nkrumah. We also have a library that has now moved to Telegram. So we have a Telegram channel for our library. All books are available there. Any book you request, let us know so that you can join us. Get in touch with me to add you to our library. We have almost 5,000 to 6,000 books, so we can easily benefit. And these are books written about Africa or written by Africa or Black people. So thank you very much for your time today, and let's meet again on Tuesday for Swahili, or Thursday for Consciousness, or next Saturday, or even Sunday, where we do some other few reviews from the private aspect of it. But we are intending to start a new class called Basic Principles or Basic Concepts of Consciousness. So we look at key terms or key concepts that are used in the book Consciousness. Thank you very much.
Can I say 2 words?
That's it, yeah.
Can I say 2 words, please?
Brother Pigeon. Sister Marley, I think you can, because you're already speaking. So
no, I've been listening and I'm thinking, what is the confusion about us knowing who are Africans?